mostly specialize in carpentry, so I just really love building things. I have a general just passion for building stuff and using my hands. I feel like a lot of them really enjoy seeing the process of the things come together. So the more that we can include the homeowner in on that process, makes them feel kind of more like they're almost part of it, and that they have a hand in it. You know.
Thank you so much, Luke, for coming by. Super excited. So I wanted to start with who you are, what you do, and those kind of things to kind of learn about who you are, what you do.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to join you today and just have a nice conversation. So, yeah, just a little bit about me. I started my general contracting company about 2 years ago, coming on 3 years now, and I'm mostly specialized in carpentry. So, I just really love building things. I have a general just passion for building stuff and using my hands. So, I'm more of like an in the field contractor. So, I'm actually with my bags on every single day working in the field alongside of my crew and everything. So yeah, I just enjoy.
Carpentry, like more framing or like rough, or like more like finished carpentry though, or like both, any kind of carpentry.
Yeah, so basically a wide range of carpentries. We do everything from rough framing all the way to finish. We take great pride in what we do, and we like to kind of mix things up and not just do the same thing every day. So it's really nice to be able to frame something, with good tolerance within like a 16th of an inch or so, and then we get to go through and finish it off as well. Doing mostly like TNG soffits and ceilings and stuff like that, or doing like siding, different things. So yeah, just a wide range. We also do interior finish, so we do like crown and base. We do door casings, window casings, all kinds of fun stuff like that. So it's fun to challenge ourselves and try and do some of the finish also, not just do the framing side of things, because that can just get kind of repetitive.
Okay. Would you say you were more into like remodeling or like new build though?
So we do right now. We're doing a lot of remodels just because that's primarily what we can kind of get our hands on, being kind of a newer contractor. I'm finding that there's a lot of competition trying to get in with some of the newer construction. So that's definitely something we'd like to do more of. But for the time being, I'd say it's probably 80% remodels, and we get to build some new things, every now and then, and that's really like a lot of fun and really what we want to try and focus on. But like I said, it's sometimes kind of tough to find those jobs.
Okay. What do you think, like, for homeowners in general? What do they obsess over the most that you feel like that it actually doesn't matter, especially when it comes down to like renovations and things like that?
Um, I would say some homeowners, they sometimes they don't realize what's going to be exposed and what's not. So sometimes there's a lot of things that might get covered up, or that you're going to end up not really seeing at the end of the project. So they can get hung up on different details that might not matter at the end of the project, that might get covered up by finished materials. But for the most part, we do a really good job of like walking our customers and the homeowners through the whole project. So there's a lot of times where they just watch like right over our shoulders, and they really enjoy seeing the process of coming
Mm.
in and checking on us, and they like to just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like a lot of them really enjoy seeing the process of the things come together. So the more that we can include the homeowner in on that process, makes them feel kind of more like they're almost part of it, and that they have a hand in it.
It's more like the craftsmanship, right? Like when they can just watch you guys actually performing on the field.
Yeah, and then a lot of times too, depending on what we're working on, like let's say we're working on a gazebo or a pergola or something, there's a lot of the details that we'll lean on the homeowners to kind of try and help us put together. Like, for example, like an overhang, depending on what size they want their overhang to be, or if they want their rafters cut plumb, or if they want them cut with a pitch on them. There's a lot of details that we try and include the homeowners in on that might not be the nitty gritty details in the contract itself. And then we're able to kind of bring the homeowners in to kind of help us finalize the vision and put everything kind of together, to ensure that they're going to be happy with the end result. But basically, the more I find that we can include them and into part of the process, they just feel very appreciative of that, and it usually goes a long way.
Okay, so it's almost like you're doing your job like on the field, but they're actually like working with you for the whole process as well. Like anywhere from like obviously signing the contract, but as well as like in the middle portion where you're actually doing the project with them all together and they're right next to you.
Yeah, I mean, if they have the time, usually, but it seems to me like a lot of times, more often than not, like I said, with some of those details that might not be finalized on the contract, that they really appreciate having the opportunity to be a part of those conversations and be a part of, you know, coming up with exactly what the finish is going to look like. So we like to include them on that. Yeah, just small things like that I think go a long way. Having a good relationship with the customer throughout the building process is something that's pretty important, and just building rapport. With me being kind of newer in business, I get a lot of my work from referrals. So the more of a relationship that I can build with these homeowners, the more chance I believe that there is that we can get referrals from them later on, or even a good review.
Have you ever get uh when you walk into the client for a bit, for example, where client just like start questioning everything on a job that you're about to do, or say they want to do a gazebo like you mentioned before. Have you ever like walked into that and then the client basically asks you like a million different questions on that?
Yeah, I would say that that has happened before. I actually do appreciate that more, more than you might think, just because to me, coming up with all the details is very important. So the more that the homeowner actually knows their stuff, the less that I have to explain, and then the faster that we can kind of come to terms and come to an agreement with exactly what they want. So the more detailed details that the homeowner has as part of their vision, it just makes my job easier if they can um, really kind of quiz me on that and go through all the details. Then it helps the process and the project come together, I think, a lot faster and a lot easier. And then those people might not need to be alongside of us the entire time, because we'll have a conversation, and they'll kind of know kind of what page we're on. So I actually don't mind that at all. And that's something typically with my contracts and a lot of the builds I do, I really try and add as much detail in there as possible. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't mind it if they want to ask questions from A to Z. And then for me, the building process starts, in the mind. So the more planning that we could do and kind of see things through, then the less chance there is of having an error or something go wrong.
Okay, what do you see like percentage wise, like people who ask gazillion questions or the ones that, you know, come in there, hey, look, I want to do a gazebo or things like that. What do you think, like percentage wise, from your experience, are for these two kinds of people?
More often than not, I would say the homeowners typically don't ask too many questions. It's more or less they just want the project done.
Okay.
And a lot of times, like I said, we'll put so much detail within the contract and within our estimate that a lot of that stuff is really explained. So I like to stay ahead of the curve and explain a lot of that stuff before we actually start the process. So, like I said, being pretty detailed and pretty organized, it really helps to eliminate the chance of having an error or something go wrong. So that's something that's really important to me. Is a lot of times, like if a bigger contractor wants to use me as a sub, typically I'm finding like they'll exclude a lot of information that I need. So
Like what kind of information in what ways though?
like for example, like I've recently had a larger contractor that wanted to sub me out to do some decks and stuff,
Okay.
and he included a lot of information about like the decking that he wanted me to add on there, and a lot of information about like the railing.
Okay.
But when it came down to all the specifics for the framing and the specifics for the footings, and just different things that he missed or might not have included, then that just leads me to ask more and more questions to kind of get the to really understand and give a more accurate estimate, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so for me, yeah, it just really comes down to planning it all out, like I was talking about, like kind of in the mind first, where you can kind of visualize it happening, and then I feel like it's a lot cleaner that way and less chance of having an error rather than just trying to wing something and put something together.
Gotcha. Do you think a lot of clients are not asking the right questions then, or not asking enough questions, like to contractors in general?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times they're not asking maybe enough questions. There is a lot that goes into it, you know, and more often than not, like if you have a homeowner that has a clear vision of really what they want, it's just going to ensure that they actually get the final result and the final product that they're looking for.
Okay.
You know, so finding clients that have like 3D renderings or just a clear vision of really where they're trying to go, I think is very important. It could really help eliminate anything happening here, you know, or ensuring that they're actually going to get the final product that they're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like let me flip the table here. Like say you're the homeowner that you're trying to hire a contractor. What will be some questions that you would ask for that contractor, right? To either vet them out to see if they're actually a good contractor or not, or like to see, if he understands the whole trade thing or not.
Yeah, so for me, when I put together my estimates and my bids, like I'm putting everything down to all the fasteners that we use, to all the hardware, all the hangers,
Wow, okay.
all the post bases, all the connections. So every little piece, there's no question on exactly how we're going to put everything together. I really don't see a lot of contractors that do it that way, but for me personally, that's just the best way for me to, like I said, to share with the homeowner kind of where I'm going to make sure we're on the same page, and then to also keep myself out of any trouble, like from a legal standpoint.
Of course.
You know, so the more that I can outline onto the contract and fine detail, I feel like the more protection that I have being a builder, and also it just helps us, you know, stay ahead of the curve. And that way, if they want to change something, or there should be no question about once the building process actually starts, there should be absolutely no question about how we're going to do things. But for me, if I was a homeowner, those would be like specific details that I'd be looking for. Is are they including, you know, how deep the footings are, how wide they are, how what kind of rebar are you putting in there? Is it number three rebar, number four? Are you doing a grid? Is it this? A lot of times, most of that stuff is outlined in plans and permits, you know, but more often than not, I'm finding that homeowners might not have all the plans put together exactly, you know, so a lot of times contractors are throwing things together and they might be a little bit out of code or maybe not up to the exact engineering that, you know, in California we've got some really strict building codes. So I know for me, I always try and overbuild everything just for that peace of mind. Yeah,
Okay.
just for peace of mind.
What would you say like gotcha. What would you say like there's I'm sure there's clients where they didn't talk too much at the beginning, right? Because they don't understand construction as well as you do. What would you say like those ones that get into during the project or even after the project, um, their questions are regarding the project towards um, towards kind of like what you did and things like that. So example being, say you're going through the project, you're finished up and everything looks beautiful, and then the client comes asking me, he's like, "Oh, I thought we talked about X, Y, and Z, but it looks a little bit different, or this is was not what I expected to be." Um, have you experienced that at all in your career, or like have you heard about a story like this
I
before?
have, yeah, I've definitely experienced things like that before. There are people they get these expect unreal expectations almost in a sense to, let's say they want to have a natural wood product, but they want it to look like a composite, you know. So
Okay.
they get the natural wood product and it's got knots in it or it's got imperfections, you know, 'cause it's made out of real wood, so it's not going to be totally straight. You know, every piece might have a little character to it. You know, so there's times more often than not when we'll install larger beams. You know, let's say an 8x8 post with like an 8x12 beam on top of it, and they have knots, or like sometimes after we install them and they sit in the sun for a couple days, they can tend to
Mm.
create more cracks, and and things can kind of not look the same after a few days of contract of what's the word, expansion and contraction. So once a lot of these natural products are sitting out in the sun, and the moisture starts to kind of escape from them and things, there's a lot of chances for expansion and contraction. So I have all that stuff in my contracts though too now. So now every time I do a project, I'm always very communicative about all that as well. So that
Like up front, like before you guys even started, like you guys going through what you talking about discussing the project. This is the things that you're going to mention to the clients to set the right expectation. It sounds like.
yeah, just to stay ahead of the curve. That way, once like we're talking about posts and beams and expansion and contraction. So the last thing I want to happen is for that to occur, and then all of a sudden they're freaking out about a crack in their beam, or they're expecting me to spackle it or close it, or to do something maybe that might not be in the contract. That just would be extra work for me. So I can always have that conversation up front and just say, hey, look, we're using natural wood products. If you want to use aluminum framing, you want to use metal framing, we can always use something like that where there won't be that issue. But if you want to stick with, Douglas fir framing material, this is going to be bound. This is something that is unavoidable, that's going to happen. And if you'd like, we can definitely, put spackling on it, or we can put Bondo and fill it before we paint it. But, that's obviously going to be a change order, some kind of an upcharge at that point. So it's just basically the more and more that I can just add in, like I was talking about with fine details into all my contracts, and then into all the conversations that I have with the homeowners, the less likely we are to have any sort of argument or any sort of disagreement. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is keeping these homeowners happy and making sure that the final product is going to be something that they're going to be really stoked and excited about and share with their friends and family. That way they can send referrals and continue to feed our network and feed our pipeline.
It sounds like you're almost like predicting the future or like letting them know what's going to happen, right? Like, with the material that they will pick eventually or with the things that they were going to do eventually. Is that what you like trying to do, like setting the right expectation for the clients?
Yeah, let's just say that I've had a couple nightmare clients that um, now I'm not saying they're all going to be like that, but I want to make sure that I want to act as if they are going to be that person and set the record straight, set the standards. That way, there's nothing that can really go wrong. I really don't like to be in the position of having disagreements or of having change orders. So my whole goal, like I was mentioning, is to keep these people happy. And part of that process for me would be trying to predict what's going to happen with the stuff. Once we've had the experience of installing quite a bit of material, so we kind of know what's going to happen with a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I just think it's easier that way rather than trying to explain it to them later.
What do you think um and like throughout your careers or like the stories that you've heard, what are the particular um I guess you can say like type of things that goes wrong all the time with clients and contractors, right? And where I'm coming from is as a homeowner, if I would um, kind of just say I want to do a project, a deck or pergola or things like that, um, and I could go to GPT nowadays to try to find out what I can do, right? But then there's got to be the difference between asking a ChatGPT question versus actually working with a real contractor in person to actually finish this project. And so I think my question is, if you were the homeowner, what would be your thought process going from, oh, I want to do X, or I want to do the gazebo, I want to do a project, to actually finishing the project up with no problems, no headaches? What would be your thought process going through this project if you're a homeowner yourself?
Yeah, it would just be, I think, to clarify like a lot of the specifics. a lot of times, more often than not, the homeowners that are hiring these contractors without really understanding who's even going to be the ones doing the work.
Oh,
You know,
wait,
so
interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of in our industry. I think we might have talked about it briefly, but yeah, the paper contractors, which are basically contractors that just they don't actually wear their bags or do a lot of the work. So it's essentially just a middleman that would be kind of selling a job or selling a lead for somebody else to come in and do. So I think that's part of it is as a homeowner, you want to really understand who is it that's going to be over here doing and performing the work. Are you going to be subbing this out, or are you going to be performing the work in house? And then, are you going to be on site every day, or do you live in the same city? Do you live in the same state? You know, because there's a lot of times where the contractors they might not actually even live in California, but somehow they've got an online presence, or maybe they used to live here and they're generating leads and they're able to sell them to subcontractors, you know. So that would be an important thing for me as a homeowner would be I would typically try and cut out as many middlemen as I could personally, just because the more and more layers of people that you have stacked that's adding, let's say 10 or 20 or 15%, you know, onto these projects, it's just going to exponentially increase the numbers and make everything more expensive. And a lot of times you know, there are certain projects where you need a general contractor, someone who's actually not performing the work. They're just kind of organizing all the details and making sure that the process is or the project's going to run smoothly. But more often than not, these smaller residential projects, it's not really totally necessary to have something like that. You know, you could probably find a general contractor who could keep all those processes running very smooth and also perform a lot of the work in house is what I would call it, you know, where they actually have either themselves or their own personal employees that they're on site supervising every single day performing the work, you know. So that's
How do you how do you define as big projects versus smaller projects?
I well for me I used to be in the carpenters union, so we would work on like hotels, parking garages, like very, very large projects that would take years at a time to complete. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, the way that I would kind of, I mean, obviously my opinion on that's changed a little bit now, but I would say anything that's over, let's say, $100,000 in work would be kind of a larger project that I think, yeah, it might be necessary to have a project manager or designer kind of jumping in on something like that. Yeah, typically a lot of the projects that homeowners are doing, I feel like, are let's say it's a gazebo or a backyard renovation, they're going to be, you know, maybe under that number. So just depending on what they want done, how much work, how many phases are going into it. It's hard to really answer that question though, exactly what a small project is and what a large one is. But I would say anything over like a certain dollar amount, you know, would kind of jump into the next category of being like a more medium sized or larger project, kind of over $100,000.
Gotcha. So back to your points earlier on paper contractors or the person that actually knows what they're doing, they're performing the works on site. What are going to be some like critical questions for you to ask them to identify if they're actually knows what they're talking about, they're going to be doing the work on site, or they have an in-house team, versus they are just trying to sell the leak, like you said. What would be some questions and what would be some answers that you look for in these questions to be able to identify the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think just being straight up and asking them would be a good way to start, you know, and then you can kind of get a sense of if someone actually knows or has passion for the project, depending on how they describe it and how much detail they want to go into. Like I was mentioning with like the way that we go into a lot of our bids and a lot of the way we do it, like we'll specify everything down to the nail, like all the fasteners that we're going to use and all the hardware, every little thing, and it just I feel like the more that we can expand on that, it not only sounds more professional and is more of does a better job for us selling the projects when we do go into that detail, but it also gives the homeowners a peace of mind knowing like, oh man, this guy he's thought about everything down to like what kind of screws he's going to put in here, or, so some stuff like that I think would be pretty valuable. It's just having that straight up conversation, and then you can kind of just get a good sense of somebody, just depending on how much detail. And if you really want, like you said, you could chat GPT a lot of this stuff, and you can dive as far into it as you really want. A lot of the homeowners, like you mentioned, at first they might be kind of new to it, but after a few nights on ChatGPT, they become experts pretty quickly, and or at least they think they are. So yeah, that's something that a lot of homeowners really enjoy doing, is asking Google these questions, and then all of a sudden they're supervising, and there are project managers. So
Say you got three bids, okay, um, three different contractors, and you're the homeowner. What's gonna be your thought process going through of picking the person that I wanted to working with for my project?
yeah, so it would come down to, there's three aspects that every contractor talks about for building. You can have a good price, or you can have good quality, or you can have good speed, but you can never have all three. Yeah. So yeah, those would be the three key kind of components that I'd be kind of looking at within the contracts themselves, or within the bids. So I would definitely ask those three questions for each contractor. Kind of, what's your timeline? And then you kind of weigh out whatever their number is and whatever their price is, and then yeah, you talk about the quality. A lot of times, if it's going to be a good contractor, they're most likely going to have a good portfolio with a lot of either referrals or pictures of jobs that they've done. Because all the good craftsmen and builders that I know, they take really high pride in their work. So they're typically taking pictures throughout every step of the process. And that way they have great before and after pictures to add into an awesome portfolio. So that would be one thing I'd want to see, is let me see your portfolio, let me see some work that you've done, and then let's talk about the number and then the timeline. And then from there, it just be more or less comes down to personality too. I mean, a lot of times that might actually be the most important thing for a lot of people, is what they really want is just someone that they can genuinely trust. um, when you start a project with these homeowners, more often than not, it could go for a month, it could go for 6 months. Some projects they go on for a year. So this is like more or less going to be someone that you're going to be spending quite a bit of time with. And not only that, you have them in your home, you have them, seeing your personal belongings. They're going to be around your family members, they know where you live. So more or less, stuff like that does become pretty important. Is this person trustworthy? Could I actually is their crew trustworthy? Are these people that I could see letting in my home for 6 months at a time? Or good questions that you want to ask yourself.
Gotcha. Now let's take a step forward. Okay, let's say you pick the contractor, everything's ready to go. You're super excited. What would be some of the things that you would have expect, or you would have do to make sure that the process of construction actually goes smooth, right? Like I'm sure we've heard of horrendous construction stories, delays, or change orders and all that stuff. And so, what would be if you're the homeowner? What would be the things that you would have either do or say to the contractor or having the conversation with to make sure that the process of construction actually goes smooth until till we finish, and then all good.
Yeah, just like I was talking about, like setting my expectations with the homeowners and kind of staying ahead of the curve. The homeowner can do the same thing on their end. So everything from floor protection to dust protection, plastic, covering furniture, every little detail matters. So I mean, depending on, like, if for example, if I was going to have a contractor come and I had a very nice house in California, those would be some of the more important things to me. Is how much care are you guys going to put into this? I want all the floors protected. I'm going to want zip walls up with plastic up with fans, with negative pressure sucking all the dust out. Like all the little things would be very important. And then once, like you said, once it comes down to the project, it's like, I think a good upfront question would be, What's the chance of us, going over the budget on this, and let's try and stay ahead of the curve and stay ahead. Like, what are the things that could go wrong? So you want to think and talk about the things that could possibly go wrong before they actually happen. So a lot of times we do that. Let's say we're going to rip off some old siding and we can't really see what's underneath or what's going on inside the actual framing. I'm always sure to have that conversation before we actually take anything apart. Like, obviously we don't have X-ray vision. We can't really see what's behind here, what's going on. So more likely than not, we should probably expect for the worst. That when we rip this siding off, we're going to find framing that needs to be probably replaced. We're going to find house wrap that needs to be rewrapped. We're going to need to repaper things, stuff like that. So it's like a lot of times, just it comes with experience. But the more projects that you kind of do, you kind of realize, like, okay, these are the things that could kind of go wrong, and this is what we want to kind of budget for. A lot of times too, like, I'll have clients that want to say, oh yeah, our budget's 50,000. Typically I'll tell them, okay, then let's make sure we only do spend 40. That way we have a reserve of 10, because you never want to really max out your entire budget. It's always good to have a reserve on hand just in case, depending on what project you're doing, especially with remodels, to have a little bit of a reserve, just in case there are change orders.
What has been the worst condition when you open up a wall?
I mean, we've seen terrible, like, to where the studs are like sponges. Like, you grab a stud and you can like squeeze it together, and you can actually see all the membranes inside of it like squeezing together like layers of paper. We've seen I've seen so much termite damage that you just barely knock your hammer on it, and the entire board's just falling apart. Like, it's just hollow on the inside because it's just been being eaten by termites for just so long. So I've seen some pretty bad stuff, to be honest with you, and I always try to hope for the best but expect the worst. Typically on some of these older homes, it's kind of like you're opening up a can of worms, is a good expression that a lot of people use. Like, once you go in, like I said, to fix the siding, then okay, now it's like, do you want to fix the framing on the inside too and rewrap it? And so it's more or less, you want to just do one thing, but it ends up being three or four parts that you need to fix.
From your experience, what would you say, like, percentage of likelihood of when you open up a wall, something is wrong or something you have to repair that was not the original plan?
You can usually tell before. There's a lot of homes that were like built back in the 60s or 70s or even earlier, where you can kind of get a sense before you even start removing anything, that you kind of have just your spidey senses tingling, like, something's going to be going on back there. Um, Typically, like, if you don't have that feeling, it'll most likely just be something minor. Or a lot of times, if it is something minor, usually we'll just take care of it just for free. A lot of times, like, if we're able to fix something that's kind of smaller and just kind of add, like, let's say, like a free change order onto the ticket, where we can add like a separate line item that we're not actually going to charge the homeowner for, they goes a long way, and they're really appreciative of that. So yeah, I mean, I would say the chances are, depending on how old the home is, like I said, you can really get a good sense of it before it actually even happens. Usually there'll be some kind of sign, let's say, like water damage that's seeping through the drywall or something, to give you a red flag and an indicator of, hey, there's something going on here. At that point, you kind of know something's going on in there.
So what would you do at that point? Like, say, you walk into the client's house and you're doing some sort of project, you're going to have to open up the way eventually, but you do see signs that there might be repairs that needs to be done after you open up wall, but you don't know. Like you said, we don't have invisible eyes, right? You don't know when you open it how bad it'll be. So what at that point, what would you tell your clients?
Yeah, just to have that conversation with them. Hey, I'm more than willing to take this apart for you, and we can take a look. back there, and we can a lot of times in situations like that we can work out a time and material price where, let's say, we don't know exactly what we're going to find, but we can come up with, like, let's say, a set dollar amount per hour plus material that we can go and we can complete all the work. Or we can also leave it as, hey, we'll take this apart, and then once we look inside, then we can really come up with the number for you. But um, yeah, I mean, typically it's like something that they're going to want to do regardless. So at least getting that demo phase over with and complete so they can actually see what's back there would give them a little bit of a peace of mind, and also give them the ability to actually come up with like a realistic game plan and an estimate for what work needs to be completed. So that would be a good way to go about it. That usually we do is, more often than not, have that conversation. Hey, it looks like there's water damage, or it looks like something's going on back here. There's red flags. So we can do it one of two ways. We could give you a time and material number where we can complete the entire project just based on an hourly rate plus the material costs. Or if you really want us to, we could just demo what's here. We can look at what's going on, and then we can come up with a game plan in a good sense and actually give you an accurate bid from there to actually fix this and, to move forward.
Yeah, like what do you see the most of when it comes down to like homeowner not knowing things that'll cause problems during or after the project?
Yeah, so a lot of times there might be just like like a gap in the understanding of exactly like how things are put together. So if you could really, like,
Like the actual construction itself, like how the deck is built or how the pergola is built.
yeah, or how the walls come together, like, or if there's just every little detail. So the more that you can explain it to them, and then if you have to draw a picture, I feel like a lot of people are like more visual learners, so you could really kind of draw pictures for them, or you can pull up resources online even to like kind of show them and to help just get your point across. But the more that you could just help the homeowners come to that understanding, like you said, if there's a lack of understanding there, I mean, then it would be our job as contractors to really make sure that they do have a proper understanding of everything before we move forward and try and get a contract signed. You're just kind of asking for trouble if you don't go through that process, in my opinion, or something to for them to complain about. My whole goal, it would be to try and eliminate the possibilities of the homeowners having anything to complain about. Just having, I feel like having an over communication, and over explaining things. There's nothing wrong with that. So the more that we can really kind of just beat a dead horse and make sure that they know exactly what's going on, it's like, all right, now we knew this was going to happen. We knew this was coming. Now, I mean, what are we going to do to move forward?
Do you think all complaints can be solved by setting the expectation before the project started?
In my experience, yeah, the more that you can stay ahead of the stuff before it happens, I haven't had any problem. Usually, people are really appreciative of going that distance to really try and make sure that there's a clear understanding of what exactly is going on. A lot of times too, homeowners, they're really happy to like learn more about the construction process and like learn more about exactly how their house comes together. I found that a lot of times that they don't actually know like what's behind their drywall or what's behind their walls. Like a lot of times they don't really know exactly. They've been wondering for years. Like they're just curious. Like they just want to know like what's back there. How does this come together? So a lot of them, they're like mesmerized and kind of blown away when they actually get more of like a legitimate understanding of how exactly the house is put together.
Do you think with all the AI nowadays, like have that affected how you do work like nowadays versus before?
It can make my job easier, in my opinion, because it gives the homeowners more information, and it can also give me more information. I don't really use AI a lot, but every now and then we do use AI, especially for like 3D renderings and stuff. Really
Hmm.
easy to just go on to like Gemini and just type in, create me a picture of, you know, a pergola with 8 by 8 posts with 8 by 12 beams with, and you really just put in a nice descriptive prompt, and it'll spit out an image pretty much of exactly what you're looking for. And then you can show that to the homeowner and be like, oh, is this what you want? Is this what you want us to build? Okay, cool. Let's go for it.
Let's take that for example. Like when you're looking at a project, say a pergola or things like that, what is your thought process on most important things from a homeowner perspective, which is obviously, like you said, timeline, pricing, and then the quality of work itself? How would you kind of set the right expectation of this is how long it's going to take, this is when we're going to start, and this is how much it's going to cost, knowing that it's not a quote unquote a true cost because if they did change their mind, it'll be a change order. What would be the conversation sounds like when you're talking to the client um, to help them understand these things?
Yeah, it would just be to set a budget and then set realistic allowances for each step of the process. So depending on, a lot of times I'm finding that if we do add all the details that I've been kind of talking about throughout the interview here, like if we're able to come to an agreement on a lot of those details, very little, are they changing much? Um, but yeah, more often than not, just having proper allowances and having proper budgeting is pretty important. And then a lot of the material, we price out by the square foot or we price out by the linear foot. So if, let's say the square footage changes or the linear footage changes, then we can just have that reflected in the allowance based on the material price. So a lot of it's, pretty like transparent to where it's not like we're just coming up with some imaginary number, but it's like, hey, this was the original material that we have in the original contract that we were going to use based on this price per square foot. And now you want to use, let's say, something that's twice as expensive. Well, that's the reason for the price change. And now, it just makes my job a lot easier because then it doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just coming up with random numbers, and people a lot of time don't realize how expensive construction really has gotten. So it can just be a time saver for both me and the customer at that point to have, like a paper trail and some numbers that I can go off and really justify doing change orders if it's necessary. Something that I really try and stay away from, but if we are going to do change orders, it's something that it's important for me to have, like I said, something to back it by, and we're not just coming up with imaginary numbers out of thin air.
What are the main things when it comes down to timeline? And so I'm sure clients can chat GPT, right? Like how long does the deck's going to take, or how long does a pergola is going to take for it to be built up, right? What do you think in terms of like timeline wise, from a client standpoint, to expect out of people, or I guess you can say somewhat strangers, to come to their house, right? To knock on their doors, to go inside of their home, and to God knows what they're gonna do if the homeowner is not in their room or go to work, right? But you have like a bunch of strangers like running around inside your house, and I don't even know how, or homeowners don't even know how long it's gonna take, and then when they did get back home, they would not know what they're gonna see, right? Like I'm sure you've seen jobs that are super clean, all nice, neat, piles up, versus the jobs that are like trash tools or debris and dust everywhere. Like, what are the conversations that you'll be having in terms of like timeline, and also how do you ensure that I'm sure you have helpers um, to go along with you to finish the project. What are the conversations look like between you and the client? And also, if you're the client, what would be the question that you would ask the contractor for that?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that you want to ask immediately is about like floor protection, dust containment, plastic and furniture coverings. Do we need to move our furniture out? A lot of times, Homeowners won't really necessarily want to pay for storage, so they'll leave a lot of their furniture in the house while the work's actually being done. So it's like important everything gets covered up, everything gets wrapped and protected. Um, I also even have the conversations with a lot of my customers, like, because more often than not, they're going to want us to help move furniture around. So I even try and stay ahead of that expectation where it's like, hey, we can, and I'll even put it in my contract too, but it's more or less like, we're more than willing to help you move your guys' furniture around, but there's no guarantee that we're not going to break it, or, something could get chipped. Obviously, that's not something that we want to have happen, but unfortunately, like, we're not going to be able to replace your table or replace your couch, or just stay ahead of those expectations too. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
the safer, if you really want to ensure that your furniture is going to be exactly as you want it, like 100%, you're going to be the one that's going to be responsible for moving all the furniture. Or if you want to get a moving company, you're more than welcome to get a separate moving company that can come in here, move everything, wrap everything up if you want. Like I said, we're more than willing to help you out, and we're really usually careful about it. But the last thing that we want to have happen is a homeowner to say, hey, you chipped my table, when maybe we really didn't, and they're just trying to get a free table out of us. So it becomes kind of like a tricky little game, almost like a tricky situation that it's kind of, you don't really want to be in, being a contractor and moving other people's personal belongings. So more often than not, I'm trying to either get them to do it or hire a separate moving company to do that stuff for me. But yeah, just having those conversations up front about floor protection, about furniture protection, about dust containment, about all the, there's really only a couple really key things that you really need to make sure is, if they're
So
going to set up plastic walls and things like that, it's really going to make a big difference with like negative pressure with fans to suck out all the dust and debris, to pump everything outside, is going to be something that you kind of want to ensure that your contractor's going to do if you're doing a big interior remodel. um, but yeah, I would say for me as the contractor, that's something that I'm more or less pretty like uptight about, is like, a lot of times we do perform a lot of the work in house, but there are circumstances to where I'll sub things out. Like, let's say if we need to do like plumbing or a large amount of electrical work, I might end up hiring some of my subcontractors to come take part in that. And they're all very aware of like expectations. So it's basically all of my subcontractors will sign contracts with me being the general contractor, that basically say that, you need to keep a very like clean and orderly workplace. Part of the expectation is that every single day you're cleaning up. Everything's going to be stockpiled, and neatly organized. We're not going to have like wrappers and cigarettes. Absolutely no smoking cigarettes. A lot of times, more often than not, we don't even allow like music and stuff on our job sites. We'll try and have people just wear headphones. That way, you don't have like loud music blaring, like that the homeowner might not be comfortable with. So we
mm-hmm.
really try and take all the precautions that are necessary, just to ensure that if the homeowner is going to be living at home during the process, that they're going to be comfortable and they're going to feel respected. And let's say they have little kids, that they're not going to have foul language, things like that. So just to present ourselves professionally is something that's really important to me. And also, like you were talking about, like the tidiness, the neatness, it's not only going to make the job site just look cleaner and be easier to work in, but it's going to be a safer environment, less tripping hazards, less chance of, stepping on a nail or certain things like that. So it's all very important to keep everything basically as clean and tidy as we can. I think it goes a long way and leaves a lasting impression on the homeowners if you do run a tight ship like that.
Absolutely. You've mentioned you have subs as well, right?
I do, yeah. I mean,
When you looking at your subs, and when you're selecting them, right? I feel like it's very similar as if a homeowner's selecting our contractors, right? How do you vet your subcontractors out? Like, what are the things that you look for in your subs to be able to say like, hey, you are good to step on my job site for you.
yeah, so I don't, like, I love like all people of different backgrounds, and but like more often than not, the people I'm going to surround myself are going to be the people that I'm going to kind of become more like, you know. So I strive to find people that are going to be inspiring, that maybe set the bar higher than I even do, people that have high expectations, that genuinely just take pride in their work. You know, you want to find subcontractors that they want to go above and beyond to make sure that they're not going to have any callbacks, that nothing's going to go wrong, nothing's going to get broken. Find people that are experienced to where, I mean, construction's fortunately one of those things to where if you know a little bit about it, you can kind of get a good sense is if somebody else knows about it as well. So,
Do you like go to their job sites to check it out, like their actual work, what their job site looks
yeah,
like?
I mean, if they'll give me that opportunity, I always,
Like let's play this out. Like say, you know, there's a random subs out there of whatever trade and you're going onto his job site. The second that you walked on his site, what are the things that you immediately see of like, hey, that's red flag, or that's not the person, or I like that? What are the things that you look for and don't look for on their job sites?
yeah, like the things that I've been mentioning before, like let's say they have flooring put down, like new flooring, but they don't have anything protected, you know, so people are just walking all over it and getting it dirty. If they're installing, let's say like if a general contractor's had some new doors and windows installed, primarily like doors, and they don't have thresholds covered or like the jambs covered, you kind of know that they really don't know what they're doing because more often than not, the jams and the thresholds are going to get kind of worn out or beaten up a little bit. The more and more subs that kind of traffic through, carrying more and more material, there's a chance that, let's say you put in a brand new door and then some guys are coming in rolling over it with the dolly or doing, you know, and then all of a sudden your brand new door,
Kabam.
yeah, all it takes is one little scratch and the thing's toast, you know. So I mean, there's a lot of things like that where you can kind of tell right away, like, oh, this guy really knows what he's doing, because they'll take extra precautions that might seem kind of silly at first, but then when you really step back and think about it, you're like, wow, that actually is like a really good idea, and then you can learn from them. But for me, like I've just had a lot of like really inspiring like contractors and craftsmen that I've had the opportunity to work with. So I kind of can get a good sense of like, oh man, this guy like really takes pride in his work and like he's building like a long lasting product that's gonna be something the homeowners are gonna be blown away with, you know? Like so like I said, you want to find people that inspire you, that are setting the bar high, that they're going above and beyond, and then that they take great pride in their work, knowing that they're not going to get any callbacks or have anything to come fix afterwards because everything was done properly the first time.
Gotcha. For a homeowner, um, they're probably not going to be as like very technical like us, right? Like when you walk in, you can see the different trees. Would you agree to this statement where a protection is probably one of the most easiest way to spot if someone, whether or not contractor, subcontractor, general contractor, whomever, actually take care of it in their pride, which is protection, like how well they do protection around their walking area or the ones they're walking around? Or do you think there's something else that's a lot easier to spot when you're looking at a contractor to see if they are good or not?
I think that's a big indicator. Also, another big indicator is like what kind of tools does this man does this person use? Like for me, I'm like big like a big tool nerd, you know, so I can tell like, oh man, like this guy's probably like gonna be he's gonna know what he's gonna know his stuff, you know, just based on what kind of tools he's got with him, you know? Or
Okay, for the client or for the homeowners that don't know any kind of tools or they know barely anything, what are the brands that they should look for? What are the tools they should look for? Or what are the brands and tools that they should stay away from?
I mean, for me, like it's all personal preference, but a lot of times anyone that's typically got like Milwaukee tools probably is gonna be pretty decent. And then
I like that. I use Milwaukee as well. Yeah, I love
as
this.
far as like framers and carpenters, you definitely want to probably
Hmm.
find a crew that's gonna be using like tool bags, and most likely not going to be a tool bag that you're going to find at Home Depot. So like something nice like Occidental or Diamondback, or someone that you like we're talking about taking pride in your work. Typically people that take pride in their work are going to have some nice tools to use, most likely have some kind of a nice work truck that they probably take care of. A lot of the better contractors that I've got to know or ever had a chance to be around, people that take care of their tools. So they're most likely not going to have a bunch of nicks in their cords, or have cords that are split in
Mm.
half, or probably have they're like most likely going to wrap everything up nicely at the end of the day. It's going to look like, oh man, this guy actually like has a system in order. He's got a work truck where it's all organized, let's say, rather than just throwing a bunch of stuff in the back of a pickup truck. Like, they actually have toolboxes on their truck, and each toolbox has individual compartments for everything, and they know where everything's at. So that's one thing that's like important to me, is like for my subs, it's like, are they organized? Do they have nice gear? Not that's the only thing that matters, but I mean, it is probably a pretty big indicator, unfortunately for me, that's like, man, this guy, he's taken the time to invest in some really high quality like tools that he's taking care of. And that's, for guys like me, like, I'm always looking to add more carpenters onto the crew, or have more people in my Rolodex that I can call when I need more carpenters. So more often than not, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to fit that description, where they're going to have, you know, more of their stuff figured out, rather than.
Definitely. Like, in a quick side note, one of my best guys, they actually saved up a lot of money for a bunch of jobs and get a whole set of fest tools, which it's amazing. I gotta say that.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the big ones. And it's a lot easier as a homeowner, right? If they don't have any experience, where they can spot on these things versus the actual trade things that you might have to have some sort of experience. Like walking into the job sites or going to see job sites for your lifetime to be able to spot these things. Um, what are more things in terms of like as a homeowner standpoint, because I really wanted to help like day-to-day homeowners that they might not know anything about construction
Yeah.
to understand when they have a thought of, hey, let's say I want to do a deck, what are the places or areas that you think they could find reliable information on, besides just go on GPT and be like, hey, I want a deck. um is there areas that for you, like, to either your material vendors or I've heard a friend of mine, they go to particular unions or particular groups, communities that they go look for, or maybe like shows, trade shows, to ask for very professional advice. Do you have any of like these things that I've just mentioned for just the day-to-day clients that say, hey, I want a deck, but I don't know, I have no idea how to do it or what kind do I want, to go there to actually find out a bit more information about the projects that I wanted to do?
Yeah, I would say, like, let's say if I was a homeowner that had no idea about how to do any of this stuff, but just let's like I would start going on like Pinterest or on Instagram, and then you can find projects that other homeowners have completed. And then from there, you can use that as like a basis to kind of create a guideline for really what you want your ultimate vision to look like. So basically, you could use other people's projects that have already been completed and just kind of say, oh, I want something similar to this. Or maybe you take two pictures and you say, I want these pictures to combine and create something that's a combination between the two of them. But the more that you can kind of just visualize really what you want, I mean, the sky's the limit. You can really have a builder. There's a lot of really great, talented builders out, especially where we're at in California, and you can find one that's going to give you what you're looking for. The question is, are you going to come up with the vision? Are you going to come up with all the details, and really make sure you have all the details in place before you start the project? Because there's a lot of times where, let's say, um, they build a gazebo or a deck or something in their backyard, and then after the fact they're like, oh man, I wish we would have added electrical, or I wish we would have added lighting, or I wish we would have added a fire pit or a fan or this or that, or different things. And it's like, you most likely could have gotten that maybe added into the scope of work for maybe not the exact same price, but maybe not for terribly much more expensive. You could have gotten everything you wanted rather than just 90% of it. So that if as a homeowner, it's like the more that you can really just as a couple, like if it's a husband and a wife, if you guys can just have those conversations up front and really just decide like, oh, these are the things that are important to us, and this is what we really would like to have. You're like most likely going to be able to get it, and if not, you can always keep budgeting and keep on saving a little bit more until it makes more sense, until you can actually afford to get everything that you're looking for. But um, yeah, thankfully now with like you said with ChatGPT, with the information age that we live in now, it's like you can find all the before and after photos of so many really cool, inspiring projects, and um, yeah, that's where I would kind of start is looking at what other people have done with a similar size space and just kind of being realistic about it. Like, oh, okay, well, they were able to do it, and I don't see any reason why we can't have the same thing. Like now let's just talk about the price of what it's going to cost to get it here.
Speaking of price, I've um I've heard of stories like of my clients and friend of mine as well, where they have like two, three, four different contractors. They walk in the house, right? And they will like the first one just walk in and be like, hey, your kitchen is 100K. The second one should be like they walk in, hey, your kitchen's gonna be 70K. Or the third one's like you're walking is like, oh, it's a 30K. And that as a single indicator, I've heard stories where it went wrong either direction, right? Like the lowest of lowest asking for change orders all the time, so it's hidden cost, right? The middle one, they're somewhat okay, but they're sometimes the middle bit would be like very tight, or they might not be as responsible and things like that. The highest bit is obviously they always having the thought behind their back of, oh, I can find someone cheaper, right? Like, or I just wasted X dollars and things like that. So what is in your opinion, like your thoughts, if you're the homeowner, you're looking at high bid, mid bid, or low bid, what's your thought process on that? Like, what do you think in terms of like reasonable pricing? How do you see pricing in construction?
Yeah, so then, based on those prices, like we talked about, the three most important things: the price, the quality, and the speed and the timeline. So once you get the numbers, then it's your opportunity to kind of break down what's the difference between these numbers. What am I going to get in terms of quality from one from the other? What am I going to get in terms of speed, and what's important to me? Do I have time to move out of the house for an extended amount of time where I can just give this contractor 6 months or a year to finish this, or is this something where I want to live here while the process is going on and we need it done ASAP to get them out of our hair? So just to go through that train of thought of thinking about, okay, now we've got the prices, so now let's figure out what the difference is between the prices. If it's something like you're talking about a kitchen remodel, there's a lot of different factors that go into that. So you just want to break down and really ensure, are you guys going to include the same refrigerator? If they're going to include the same cabinets, the same refrigerator, the same oven, all the same appliances with the same hood, everything, and the price is that much different, then you really got to ask yourself, like, what's the difference in price here? You could always ask the contractor too. A lot of times, like if homeowners have questions about our bid, they want us to separate things out into line items, so we can always do that for people as well. But yeah,
So right now you don't have line items, like you just have a big number for everything.
depending on what it is, typically we'll separate it out into line items, but we can always separate one line item out into even more. Let's say we were going to do, like, for example, a house remodel, and they wanted to do a kitchen remodel, a
Mm-hmm.
bathroom remodel, a bedroom remodel, flooring. I might have four different line items, and then within each one of those four line items, we could always separate it out even more to, like, really tell you, okay, well, this is what's going to be the labor for the kitchen. This is what's going to be the appliances, X, Y, and all the different allowances that we have for each of them. So depending on, like, just how many questions that you can ask as a homeowner, the contractor may get kind of frustrated and kind of annoyed, but more often than not, if they want to work with you, they'll separate everything out and really break the price down of how they got their number.
Gotcha. For a homeowner that met you for the first time, and when they ask you, "Hey, Luke, like, why should I trust you with my money, my timeline, my reputation?" What would be your response?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of let my work speak for for itself. I would just tell them, you know, like basically that there are a lot of good builders in California. I haven't really had anyone ask me that question, but I mean, there are a lot of great builders in California. The difference that you're going to get with me is going to be that I'm actually going to be the one that's going to show up at your home every single day. I'm going to make sure that everything's going to go smoothly. I'll be the one performing over 90% of the work, you know, if not all of it. So it's not going to be like you're just hiring some random paper contractor that's going to sub all your work out. That's not going to care about how things turn out, that lives in another state. It's going to be basically that I'm a newer company, and basically like having one project go wrong could be a make it or break it kind of thing for my company. So having maintaining a good reputation, maintaining 5-star reviews is something that's super important to me. So I mean,
How many five-star reviews do you have currently?
I think we've got around 20 or so on Google. Always trying to get more. You know, there's a lot of times where people tell us they're going to leave us one and they don't end up leaving one, or they just get busy. For some reason, I find it, I feel like I'm even the same way, where a lot of times people will try and get me to leave a review. And for some reason, I'm just not a big review leaver. There's a lot of people that they don't even have like a Google profile, you know? So,
Life is busy too. Yeah.
yeah, so we've been lucky enough to get about 20 or so in the last 2 years, with hopefully more on the way. So, yeah, that's something that a lot of times I really just let my work speak for itself. I've got a really cool portfolio that I put together, a lot of before and after pictures that I can always show people. But yeah, more often than not, I ask myself the same question. I'm like, man, these guys, there's other contractors that have been around for a lot longer than I have, you know, but most of the time, more often than not, they're not going to actually be the ones that are going to be there performing the work. They probably have a company with a much larger overhead. Their price is going to be probably a lot more than mine is, you know, so there's a variety of different reasons of why people would probably want to use my company versus others. More often than not, I'm finding just that it's because um, more or less that people just think I'm a trustworthy person and they want to. I don't know. I really can't answer that question very good. Sorry.
No, no worries. Last but not least, Luke, where can people find you, your portfolios, and everything?
So you could find me. I have a website. It's Richard General Contracting, and then I have Instagram. I've got a Google Business profile, and then a Yelp page as well. But the easiest way to get a hold of me is just to probably Google my company, Richard General Contracting, and you can find my personal number on there. If you do call or reach out to me, you're not going to get a secretary or a project manager or anything like that. You'll find a direct line directly to me, which is something that a lot of homeowners value as well. So if you do need help with any projects coming up along the way, I'd love to be a part of it and to see if we could be of service for you. So
Cool. Thank you so much.
yeah, I appreciate you having me on.